What's up you guys, I'm Dan, this is Frugal Not Cheap, and today we'll be looking at how to build or upgrade your own computer. Hey guys, so today we'll be putting together a fairly custom and high-end machine, but a lot of the principles behind this can be applied to really any levels of the budget spectrum for a personal computer. Obviously, the building your own machine or upgrading components yourself isn't the only option. You've also got the option to buy a pre-built or slightly custom PC where you can choose some of the various components yourself online. You don't have complete freedom, of course, but you can choose a lot of them. So before we go into the DIY, we'll first talk about the pros and cons of your two options, which are a pre-built PC and, of course, a DIY custom PC as we're going to be putting together today. So of course, some of the pros for a pre-built PC are pretty obvious. The first is that you don't need any know-how. The thing will just come with all the components put together and the software installed and everything generally ready to go. But of course, you'll be paying for that labor. So one of the cons will be that there will be probably additional cost involved with the labor of putting the components together and then also testing those components to ensure that they work. And if you're buying a very high-end gaming type of a computer, or even just one for productivity, there's the possibility that they could be overclocked, and so they might have already done the testing on overclocking the CPU, which for those of you that don't know, basically the processor on your computer runs at a certain speed that's stock, the baseline speed, and it is possible if you have good cooling, because these things get very hot, to actually increase those clock speeds. That's what's called overclocking them, so they're just running faster than they would otherwise. And as long as you can keep the temperature under control, then that can give you added performance sometimes, although if you get it wrong, they can cause instability and some issues. Then another pro is that there is a warranty that will cover the entire system. If something goes wrong, you don't need to worry about which individual part may have malfunctioned. You can just get in touch with them and they'll make good on the warranty for the whole thing. But again, there are some cons. So we touched on earlier that you don't get the full customization that you can get when you DIY. So you may be able to choose things like, I don't know, the size of the hard drive or the kind of a hard drive. You might be able to choose the graphics card, the operating system, some of these things, but you won't really be able to choose which brand and particular specs you'll get for each component in the build. And as you choose certain components, in order to minimize complexity for them, which helps with their economies of scale and profitability, then whoever the producer of the computer is will want to have sort of pre-built sort of scenarios. So like if I choose this this graphics card, then this narrows my options for all the other components to, I don't know, this motherboard or this CPU and this amount of RAM and that kind of a thing. So basically, you're getting, as you select the components that are important to you, you'll sort of get pigeonholed into one particular setup that helps them to minimize the variety of options that are out there. Not all of them are that way, but that's one way that they're able to get a better value for you, because the fewer the options are, then the less variability there is on them and the less costly it is for them to produce these different custom builds. So that can be an option. And then of course, the totally pre-built, like just off-the-shelf options, those are the cheapest for them to do because they can have real economies of scale on that as well. So those can be a little bit better value perhaps if the components are what you're looking for. All right, the other cost, again, that kind of goes along with this not being able to pick parts is sometimes the parts might not be all that awesome, especially the ones that you can't pick. And one of those parts that tends to be pretty junky is the peripherals. So you most likely won't get the best mouse and keyboard unless you get upsold on some better ones. So in a way, you're kind of paying included in the price, giving them a high margin on some sort of less than stellar components, right? They've got to make up the margin somewhere. All right, and then I'd say aside from the lack of customization, because you just might not be able to get exactly what you want, getting a pre-built machine is the cost, of course. And this being frugal, not cheap, we do want to try to minimize cost and get the best value that we can while not being cheap. And I would say that it is Not in all cases, because there can be, again, some big economies of scale, and they might get some volume discounts on components. So if you're not that choosy, there could be scenarios where a pre-built PC is actually cheaper than DIY. But when we talk about the higher end, and when you have really more individual specifications, it's going to be much harder for the pre-built PC to cost less than the DIY when building it yourself. And this is especially true if we start looking at using secondhand components. And in our case, we're building a PC, but we're also upgrading it, and so we're reusing components from a previous build. And if you didn't know how to do this and you were just doing pre-builts only, just buying off the shelf, then every time you upgrade, you would be basically just junking a lot of components that you could have reused in your new build. You might sell them, but if you don't really know what you're doing, then you might not know how to go about doing that either. So we're going to cover the gamut in this video. Hopefully there will be a lot of helpful information for you. Okay, so I did want to provide you with an example so you can get an idea of the kind of savings that are out there. So I priced out a pretty high-end gaming machine with liquid cooling from the brand Alienware. And as you can see, it prices out at $2,340. But then I went to PC Part Picker and looked up some components that were very comparable. In some cases, things were out of stock, and so they weren't being sold at MSRP. So I'm just putting the MSRP price for two components, which one of them I actually bought for myself. One is the CPU, the processor, and the other is the GPU. We're kind of in a shortage right now, but it is possible to backorder these items and get them at MSRP. So at MSRP, the total price that we're looking at here for the DIY build is just under $1,850. I will say, of course, you don't get the branding and the case won't look exactly the same, but essentially in terms of the abilities of performance that you can get from these two machines, then you're looking at a pretty big delta, a pretty big difference of $500. So let's talk a little bit more about DIY then. We've already talked about one of the major pros, which can be cost, especially for high-end or custom builds. And as I touched on earlier, the second one is you can get exactly what you want. So the build we're going to be doing today is actually something that's just not available on the market. There were no pre-built PCs that I could find using the case that we'll be using today, because, well, I think it's going to be pretty cool anyway. The other pro, again, is that you can resell your old parts that you don't need anymore, so we'll be doing that today as well. And you can also get used components. I didn't do that in this case. We bought new components for everything this time. But in the past, I have bought used components when I wanted to have a more mid-range type of machine. What we're trying to do today is a little bit special and a little bit spendy, but it does make sense, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. But again, yeah, you're generally able to get a cheaper high-end machine or custom machine, and also get a machine that you couldn't have otherwise put together. Oh, and the other point was about warranties. So now we won't have, of course, a warranty for the entire system. And if something went wrong, we would need to do some troubleshooting to find the component that went wrong. But on the plus side, we'll have perhaps longer warranties for the individual components from the manufacturer. That generally tends to be the case. And of course, we'll have the individual boxes for all of these things. So when we go to sell these on the secondhand market, then we can get a better return there as well. Now, what are the cons? Obviously, it's going to take some knowledge, a little bit of learning, so hopefully this video will help you to put together your own computer if you decide to. The other part is it takes time. It can be frustrating if you're not patient, so do be patient. And of course, it takes work. So let's get to that work. Let's get to building a computer. Okay, so we have here the old computer. And what we'll do here is take the components out that we'll be reusing in the new build. So this is a place where we're saving some money against buying a whole new machine. And here you can see all of the internals. So the main components to the computer are the CPU down here. You can see this is running an Intel processor. Then the memory is the random access memory, or RAM. We've got 2 sticks of some Corsair RAM over there. And these things are sitting on what's called the motherboard. That's the board that controls everything. And then over here we have our graphics card. This is a mid-range, mid to high-range graphics card from last year, the year before, an RTX 2070. And then, of course, you need to keep things cool, and so that's why we have a number of fans inside the system as well. And then under here is the power supply that keeps everything running. So the things that we're going to be selling are the case itself, and the Intel processor with this cooler that comes with it, and the motherboard. And the reason being is that oftentimes when you upgrade your processor, the newer processors are made to fit on what's called a different socket. So in other words, just the connection between the new CPUs and the old motherboards has changed, and so you're no longer able to use the old motherboards, and you're forced to upgrade. Some of this may be planned obsolescence, and some of it is also improvements in technology. I think the truth is it's probably a combination of both. Anyway, one thing is I always touch the case just to make sure that I've kind of discharged any static. There are some bands you can get and things like that that can help as well, but I've never really had an issue. I'm not all super concerned about it, but you should, try not to generate a lot of static electricity and then touch your computer components is probably a bad idea. All right, so the first thing to do is I guess we'll remove the graphics card. So we're going to unplug the power over here, and that's just one of these 8-pin connectors that's driving the power for the graphics card. There's a little tab there that you just depress with your finger, and that allows the thing to come out. There we go. Let's remove the graphics card first. I'm going to go get a screwdriver. All right, so we got a screwdriver, and this is really the only tool that you should need for this. That's kind of the great thing. It's going to be a Phillips head, not a flat head. There's the mounting brackets and just a couple of screws that are holding the graphics card on there. So we're going to just remove those, lefty-loosey. There's that. And then the other part, and this one's a little bit tricky in a type form factor, is there's a release down there for the PCI port. No? Yes. Good. Okay, so yeah, as you can see here, it's just this little release here that I was moving to the side. Very, very tricky to get if you can't see. So you kind of need to know where it was so that you can do it. And then you can see here is a little battery for the CMOS, I think. Anyway, that's the battery that helps the motherboard keep its time. Okay, so that's the graphics card out. Again, the processor here is going to stay, and I'm going to clean this stuff up before I sell it a little bit. But the next thing to do is to remove the RAM, which we are going to be keeping. So these RAM just have these little 2 tabs that you just pull outwards, and they release the RAM module. And let's see. So the motherboard and the CPU are staying. I think all the fans will stay. Yeah, the power supply will stay. All right, so the only other thing to remove is going to be the solid state drives, the hard drives that have all of our files. So we definitely want to keep those. A lot of these, by the way, have these cool magnetic removable dust filters. And here we have our 2 solid state hard drives. And it's pretty amazing how small and fast these new drives are. Let's unplug this one. And so it's just very simple plugs. A lot of them are designed so that you can only put them in one direction, which is really cool. So if you were trying to plug it in this way, it wouldn't work, and this way it would. And same thing for the serial ATA. So this one, the serial ATA moves the data, and this one does the power. And so all we need to do is remove 4 screws here. And if you have, by the way, a magnetic screwdriver, big help. And there we go. There's our solid state hard drive. This is our boot drive, so it's the most important one. All right, so here we have our new case. It is a Fractal Design Node 202. And you can see it is a heck of a lot smaller than the case that we had before. And yet we're going to pack a ton of performance in here. This is definitely not a cheap build because it's such a small factor. We're doing something very custom that's not widely available on the market. You can fit this easily on a carry-on, some laptop bags as well, definitely in a backpack. So that's really the key that we're going for here, is sort of amazing portability, but also very, very strong power still. And we are going to pay a premium for that, but again, we're going to get something that's not available on the market as a pre-built, at least not that I could find. And also we are reusing some parts, so we're able to save some money that way. And then we're also selling our old parts, so we're also going to be able to get some money back in that way as well. And so overall, we'll see how we do. I will do the math for you just because we're being open and transparent with everything. Okay, so what about the parts here? We have first a Ryzen 7 5800X processor, so that's one of the top of the line, maybe number 3, the top 3 processor for gaming performance out there. It's also quite good for, it's got 8 cores, so it's not the best, but it will be an improvement from our 6-core processor we have now in terms of productivity like video editing. So I should say, so my 2 hobbies, of course, well, I have many hobbies, but 2 of my hobbies are the 2 channels that we have here, which is Frugal Not Cheap, and also Dan Plays PC Games. So obviously we wanted a machine that could help with both. This will be able to help with the video editing for both channels, and also for the gaming for the PC gaming channel. So I get to have fun, and, well, I guess my hobbies are fun too, so anyway, but it does help the channel, so that's good too as well. All right, so that's the processor. We'll be using the same graphics card that we had before, but we're going to be putting everything on a different motherboard. We have this Aorus X570 motherboard, and then for such a small form factor, a lot of your regular sized CPU coolers won't fit, and so we had to get a low profile cooler from Noctua, and then we do want to try to do the best we can for thermals with airflow, so I did get a couple of Silverstone fans, and finally a smaller form factor power supply. So we got this one also from Silverstone, same brand that made the fans. It is a little bit lower power, but should be plenty, especially because AMD stuff tends to be very power efficient, and we'll see when we upgrade graphics cards. Hopefully the 700 watts will be enough for that in the future as well. All right, so those are all the components. I'm going to get everything out of the boxes and ready to go, and I'll be back with you in a moment to start putting it all together. Okay, we're back, and we have unboxed all of the components. And let me see if I can just show you real quick. So here's all of the stuff that we're going to be installing in this little tiny case over here. And what we have here is the new motherboard. And so we'll go ahead and put on a few of the components on here, just so that there's less faffing about when we are inside the case and our hands are cramped and that kind of thing. So the first thing we're going to put on here is the CPU. So this tiny thing costs, I think, $450, and this is the brains of the outfit. This is going to do all of the thinking and the video processing and all that kind of stuff. Let me get my coffee over here where it's safe. So there it is, just this little processor. Obviously, you want to be extremely careful with those pins and not bend any of them. That would be a terrible thing to do. And you can see that there is a little golden triangle over here, half triangle, half square. Yeah, half square is the triangle then. And so that lets you know how to line it up with the pin holes here on the socket. So to start with though, you just pull this little guy up, and then we're going to look here and try to find which way it goes. And okay, it's not as clear as I would have liked, but you can see here in this corner, it's got the that little half square or the little triangle, and so we know then that we want to line them up so that the triangle's here, and it's going to line up with that down there. So then we're just going to plop it down very gently, very carefully. It's just going to fall right in, and then once it's in there, then all we need to do is to drop this guy down and stick it in its little holder there. All right, so that's all set. Now, the only issue here is that our Noctua cooler over here has these mounting brackets for socket AM4. So they're in the right place, but obviously this isn't going to stick on top of this, because this particular motherboard came with its own custom backplate. So we're going to have to remove that. And we should be clear now to install the AMD backplate. And the direction is probably not important. Sorry, the Noctua backplate, not the AMD backplate. All right, so that's going to go there. Let's get the screws that came with the Noctua. There are also these. Interesting. We'll figure out what to do with those afterwards. But the next thing is what's called thermal paste. And so what thermal paste does is it helps create a good connection between the top of the CPU and the bottom of the cooler here, so that we can get the best cooling possible. All right, so now we need to open this. Then the other thing we want to consider is we'll have to plug this in, right? So here is the power plug, which they've neatly tucked in there. And we want to find where the CPU fan is on this thing. I'm pretty sure it's over there, but let's take a look at the manual. It's always the best thing to do when in doubt. So CPU fan is number 3, and it is located in a corner, over here. All right, so that is the CPU fan. Oh yeah, the the label is covered up by this thing. So I'm glad that we took a look because we wouldn't have known. And so it can either go this way or that way. So clearly this way is going to be the easier way to go so we can get to that CPU fan. And so yeah, then we're going to go like this. All right, this is a weird one. I have not done one like this before. So we're just going to chuck that here. Okay. And then put the back plate on. So let's see if this works. Oh, I see. Okay, what I was afraid of is it didn't look like that fat part would go right through, but it does. Oh, thank goodness. So we're all set here. So what you might do is don't just put one in and tighten it all the way. Put a couple in catty corner, so diagonally from each other. Kind of like when you do a tire. So the first thing you do is you just get it all seated in its proper place. Like so. And then the next step after that is to tighten. And then you don't want to go crazy with this stuff. Just, basic finger tight, just so it all stays in place. But you don't need to go nuts. And what we have done is gotten the cooler attached, to the CPU. Plenty of thermal paste there. And that should keep it in good nick. All right, then this thing gets plugged in here. On all these connectors, there's one side that has these 2 little tabs, or fins, more like. And that allows you to make those fins go towards the tab. And so then we can just insert it like so. And gently push down. There we go, all set. All right, other thing we can do is we can go ahead and install our memory. So the memory, one side is shorter than the other. And you just figure out where's the short side over here and make sure these are open. All right, and then you just stick them in. So we'll do the one that's further away from me here first because it's harder. Just push it in gently and they will snap in place. So again, here's the short side, there's the long side, and just get them in the grooves and gently snap them into place. Now I'm going to move this momentarily so we can open up the case. Okay, let's pop her open and see what we've got going inside. Oh, interesting. Does this come off then? Oh, here we go, guys. So there's our case, and here's our stuff. And let's see. So this side is going to be where the power supply and the motherboard go. Power supply here, motherboard here. And this bay is for the graphics card. And we're going to have a riser that's going to allow us to plug it in over there. One thing that I was told is, this routing for the power is really bad. So we're going to reroute that immediately. From here, we're going to route it instead along this side. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Being very careful, of course, cutting these zip ties so as not to damage the power cord itself. Okay, so we move the power supply cable over here. Hopefully that's going to help a little bit. Okay, this is very important. and we want to be very gentle with it. So these are the risers, PCI Express risers for the graphics card. So, all right, here are USB controllers over here. And before I go any further, it says we ought to remove the bottom cover. Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. Wow, that's tricky. All right, we got it all off finally. Okay, now it's talking about installing the power supply. Okay, the fan needs to go where the fan is, where the port is. So it's going to have to go in this direction. Oh, that's going to be very, very tight. Okay. Oh, this is very atypical. Okay. Oh, wow. All right, well, anyway, we need to screw that in. So power supply screws tend to be a little bit larger. And of course, they've included 4, because that's what you need. So they look like that. Okay. And then we can just attach the power supply here. Oh, okay. All right. Now I understand. Wow, this is very compact and in a way complicated. We need to remove this guy first, which is sort of the mounting thing for the power supply doohickey. Let's pull this power supply out. And this thing should, it looks like it slides. Yep, it slides. So there it is. All right, and so what we're going to do then is attach this to there and then stick it in there, and that's just going to hold it in place. I see. And again, this stuff is just to hold it in place. It's not like super critical to use a ton of pressure or anything like that. You never want to strip your nuts and bolts and whatnot. Just tight enough so it's all going to stay in place and not move around. So that's nice and sturdy. There we go. And then we can stick it back on this little guide here, slide it back, and then screw it back in on this side so it doesn't move. Now we've got the power supply installed. It looks like it plugs in here like this somehow. The cable must sort of tuck in like that. It's really unusual. Yeah, really unusual. But hey. Hopefully that doesn't impede with airflow too much. Alright, but you can see I've got the fan side where the screen is, the filter, so that makes sense. So we know that that's done properly. And now it wants us to prepare the motherboard and install the I/O shield. Okay, all of that is combined with our motherboard here. So what we'll do is get this power cable out of the way so we can see what we're doing. Same with those cables. Ground ourselves again, and then we'll grab the motherboard. I like to grab it by the CPU cooler, just because it's a nice sturdy place. Like, it's hooked up to the back plate, so force is distributed very nicely and everything. So here's where the input-output panel is going to go, is back here. So obviously we're going to have to put it in this direction. Here's that panel over there. We're going to just gently, obviously, very, very gently, stick that there where it needs to go. All right, so where are the motherboard screws? Okay, here we go. We just need 4 of these. Okay, they're black on a black table, so that could be a little tricky, but I think we can get this. So that part of the build is done. Oh, let me clean up. Definitely recommend to stay extremely organized while you're doing this process. Install 2.5-inch drives. So there's an enclosure that we can remove right here where we're going to put in our hard drives. Just slides out. Wow, that's tiny. And so on this thing we're going to put our drives. Essentially, these are going to go on the inside of this enclosure in here. It would make sense, I think, to have the connections facing this direction. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to make them. So the other question is, okay, you've got these here. So they're going to obviously have to go, it's going to have to go this way so that we can unscrew them in. Yeah, just gently attach. Okay, so that's one mounted and there are the connections. Now let's mount the other. So again, we'll mount it facing the same way. There we go, there are our drives. And then again, there are two things you need to connect. One thing is power, and then the other is the drives themselves. So let's go ahead, and put this back on. And that's that. Okay, now we're going to do the riser card. This is PCI Express, which is what the graphics card plugs into. And yeah, here we go, the two components. It says we begin by removing more things. And so it says to pull this off. There we go. Cool, yeah, there's the shields. We're gonna get rid of those so we can install the graphics card. So next, we take this, and again, there's a long section and a short section, so it's very easy to match up. And so you can't put it in the wrong way, which is nice. So we're just gonna chuck that right in there, very gently. And just, gently press. But it needs to be snug. I mean, it's got to be in there. So there we go. That's nice and snug. Excellent. Apparently that goes onto here. This is where we're going to mount it. So you can see it's going to go right through here. Okay. Let's get the card. Alright, it's going to go in this way. Obviously the input outputs are going to go over there, and it's going to get plugged in like so. And then we need to screw this in to hold it in place. Oh, I had those screws already set aside for that purpose. So here we go. There we go, that'll hold our graphics card in place, and it is all put together. There's one more screw, so I'm gonna install that one as well. Alright, there we go, now we've got it started. Ooh, careful. Careful, Dan. Yeah. Alright. Yep, now everything's seated nice and tight. Again, there's no point in going crazy. Whoops. With it. Oh no, it came out. Alright, so we may not need that one then. Oh no, here we go. I see. That's why things weren't going well. Okay. So the trouble was these little feet needed to slide all the way down into there. And now we can try this part of the process again, which was to get this lined up. Oh! Alright, so that's how it would work, but first we need the fans. Alright, so these are our Silverstone fans. And what we want to do here is help the graphics card to draw in air. And we want these blades to be facing the same way as the graphics card. Is another way to think about it. So you can see the graphics card is like this, and it's going to be mounted like that. And so we want these fans to be facing the same direction so that they're doing the same kind of a job, which is to pull in cool air from the outside, I think, or to try to exhaust it. Either way, we want to do the same thing so that we're working together and not working against. So that means that these fans are going to get placed like so. So we may have to, all right, one of them's no problem. it's going to go here. So let's just do that. All right, this one's no issue. Okay, that's good. But what are we going to do about the second one? Well, it's not tremendously helpful. Basically, it indicates that we would have to remove the this thing, which is the graphics card support. So we're going to do that. Okay, and now it's really tight over there, but we are able to fit the fans in here. Good. All right, let's find the screws for the fans. Okay, I'm going to put that dust cover back on, I guess. It's supposed to be a little bit magnetic. Yep, there we go. Very good. Excellent. So, there we go. We got that in. Still, yeah, we want to keep this, I think, routed on that side. That seems to be a little bit better. I think that will be better. Yeah, keep that over there. If we could, ooh, can we? Yep, just barely. Look at that. Cool. Cool. Okay. All right, so those are the fans. Now we can install the GPU, the graphics card. I think you can see better from that side. All right, here we go again. Line those things up, line that up. Very good. Okay, it's in. Excellent. And again with the screws. Okay, great. So now we've got everything sort of in there. And so the next thing is to do all of the cables. Let's see. So the graphics card needs an 8-pin. So one of these will do just fine. And then I think we'll want to route it to here, and then like so. Yeah. So let's pull this through. Man, there's lots of little stuff. All right, there we go. Yeah, and then down here. Okay. That should work. Yeah, that should work just fine. Okay. This one goes down here though. Let's get all of these up and out of the way so that we can then, yeah. All right, somehow this guy came undone. Let's get him hooked up again. Maybe this is better. Okay, there we go. Yeah, one of the hardest things with a small build like this can be cable management. So yeah, very tricky. All right, so let's get things plugged in. We need to get the power plugged in here for the graphics card. So that's pretty easy to find, an 8-pin right there. No, it goes the other direction. Okay. All right, so this thing, that's your USB. So that's your USB 3.0, and there's a little ridge here. So that'll tell you which way to line it up as you plug it into the motherboard's USB thing right here, USB 3.0. All right, there. That's in nice and tight. Yep, good. Okay. Then from here, from the front, we also need to do the audio and the power switch and the LEDs. And so they're labeled for us, thankfully. So these are the power switch and the LEDs. And then this one, these two are the fans. And this one is our HD audio. Okay, so where does the audio get plugged in? Okay, I was right. Yeah, the audio gets plugged in back there. Number 10. Yeah, it's this white one in the back. So we're going to plug this over there. And let's see, there's one that's missing. And you just line that up with the one that's missing. And chuck that in. Not easy to do. This actually would have been easier to do before we put the motherboard in, but that's okay. Just make sure that's all the way down. Yeah, okay, that's in. Very nice. Okay, and then of course we need to install the power switch and the power LEDs. So where do these go? Okay, here's the diagram for the front panel header, which is over there. So here's the power switch. Yeah, and then you can tell the polarity by the colors. All right, so these all go in the back here. So yeah, he's gonna go in there. And then here we have the, it tells you the polarity. Thankfully here, this is a minus and plus. See here the minus over here. Yeah, and the plus over there. Okay, good. Let's make sure they're all plugged in nice and tight. And now we need to plug in the two system fans as well. And then of course we also need to give the motherboard some power. So I think we'll go ahead and do that one now, just because it's one of the bigger ones. So here's the large one, which is going to go right here. Again, you've got the rounded thing, and the clippy thing is usually on the outside, or you'll see where the clippy thing goes. Just make sure it's clipped in. There you go. Oh, this is PCIe. All right, let's undo this one, because it might have been the wrong thing. Ow! Oh yeah, you can cut yourself. So be careful. There are sharp edges on things, especially the heat sinks tend to be pretty sharp. Yeah, that's much easier. And then we can plug that in here. I may plug that in later because we need to plug these things in as well. So here's the power for the motherboard. So we gotta get that one plugged in here. Yeah, this is not the smart way to do it. Yeah, no, they said to do it later, but it's not working. It's not working at all. So we're gonna do this now. Does this now? It goes the other way. Okay. Wow. Yep. There we go. Okay. Okay. And then yeah, PCI Express 8-pin. That's our graphics card. So we'll plug that one here. All right. Is that in all the way? That was not in all the way. Oh, I grabbed the... Okay, I see. I see the issue here. All right, that's fine. That's fine. All it was is they have a special connector here, so you have to connect that side in here. Yeah, there we go. That snapped right in this time, and then this one gets connected to the motherboard. All right, there we go. Okay. Holy moly! All right, let's plug in the system fans. That's number 4, which is here in this corner. That's one fan, but where's the other? Oh, okay, there are 2 number 4s. I see. Okay, so one is, yeah, right here, and then the other is in the back over there. This came installed there. And the problem is that they've used a system fan slot for this fan here. Uh-oh. Okay, so we were trying to figure out how to plug in the 2 fans back here. And luckily, very, very luckily, I was able to find a Y splitter. So this way we're going to be able to get power from the motherboard through these two to the 2 fans. Should be enough power. Fans don't require all that much juice. So that was very lucky. This is probably not something you would run into. It just happens that this guy here is using up my fan slot right there. So that's not something that you're likely to run into, but something that we did here, and that's okay. Things happen. So I should say, this is about as hard as it can get, unless we add water cooling, which we didn't do. We're using air cooling. But aside from that, like this tiny form factor, this kind of crazy gaming motherboard, and all this stuff, this is about as hard as it gets. So if you have a larger case, your experience is going to be much, much easier. So yeah, keep that in mind as we go along. All right, so let's see if we've got fans, have power, they're hooked up. We have the main motherboard power hooked up here, but we didn't hook up the 8-pin, which goes in the corner over there. So let's see if we can't do something about that. So let's see. Now this is old school. This is Molex. We don't really use that anymore. That's for our hard drives. We will be using that in a little bit. And then over here, okay, here we have the 8-pin. Okay, there we go. Clipped in. Excellent. Yeah, one thing, make sure, like, before you close everything up and turn everything on, is that you've plugged in everything that you need to. And it looks like it's gonna have to go like that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, that's in, and that's in. Okay, we're getting there. Man, there's a lot. All right, what we might do to try to save, well, just room, because things are gonna be really tight in there. Is for the hard drives. We'll give them both power just from one of these. I think we should be able to. Yeah, so this should plug into the power supply, and then we have actually 3 of these ends that we should be able to plug in, and that should be sufficient to give us some juice here for our hard drives. Ooh, yeah, that's kind of tight. Yeah, that is tight. Let's see if we can find a way to make that life a little bit easier here, because that's just too tight. So I would say that the instructions you get aren't always going to be perfect. In this case, I would argue that the manufacturer of the case told us to do things in a certain order, which may not be the easiest order that there is. So what we're going to do actually now is attach some of these things together. So we can see here how to plug in hard drives. And there are 2 components. One's the power, it's the long one. And then the short one is for the actual data. And again, you can see that L shape means you can only plug it in one direction. And here's our 6-pin. So let's get that plugged in here so we can get some juice. There we go. That'll give us some juice. And I'm going to route one of them through, but not the other. And hopefully that'll mean that I can connect both of them in a minute. All right, so then we just check that. Hopefully, yep, there we go. That's connected and that's connected. Very good. Okay, we'll route the data cable through. Good, now we got data and power. And then what I was thinking is that this one's easier to do on the other side. All right, hold on. Let's get the... Okay, this one's straight. A little bit different, but same principle. Not a big deal. Let's plug it in. There we go. All right, and then we want to give it juice as well. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, a little tight there, but we were able to get it. Okay. All right. So that's gonna hold. Now, the ones we wanted to do something with are these 2. These are our hard drive cables, also known as serial ATA data cables. And so now we need to figure out exactly where they're going to get plugged in. So we have 4 of these ports. I'm not sure you can see from there. I'll move it a little bit closer. So these 4, those are serial ATA type. The top left is 0, and the one below that is 1. And 0 is going to be the one that's connected to our Samsung drive, which is here, this one. I'm just going to try to get that one plugged in, yeah, under here. Okay, under everything. Oh, it's hard to see. Very, very hard to see in there. And also, once the cables get twisted, they kind of develop a mind of their own. There we go. Good. And this must be, yep, the one for the crucial drive, which is our second one. And we'll just stick that in here. Okay, so we can kind of be useful just to think about each component and to say, hey, is it plugged in properly? So for the motherboard, there are two. There's the 8-pin power here, and then the massive, I think it's 16 over here. So those are plugged in, we know, very good. Then we have our graphics card, our PCIe, and that's plugged in here, the blue one, so we know we've got power to that. Then we have the hard drives, and those we needed the data and the power, and we've just done the data, and we had the power done as well over here. So good, we have power also to our hard drives. The cooler's all set, everything's looking good there. So I think we are ready to close her up. Yeah, let me think. Got the fans. Fans are plugged in. They're plugged in with that Y cable there. Yeah, these controllers are all plugged in. All right. Well, now let's give a shot at putting the power supply back in its track here. Wow, this is quite a build. Definitely in terms of like space, a lot more challenging than the ones I've done previously. Alright, so we mounted the cover. It says, oh, make sure you have the PSU on, and then we mount the top cover. Wow. And then I think we're going to have it standing. So this is kind of the cool thing is then we just stick it up. Let's see. I'll do it this way so you guys can see the front. Yeah, there we go. There's the front of it. And she just sits right there. There we go. Little console style case. I think it's looking pretty awesome. We've got our CPU here, and it can get lots of air from here and airflow out there. And then we have the graphics card over here with twin fans to help out. And there's the power supply airflow. And yeah, pretty amazing. Tiny, not super light, but not terribly heavy either. So definitely something you could put in a carry-on to travel with. Be a little bit heavy in a backpack. You could do it, but I don't think for mile-and-mile treks kind of thing or anything like that. So now we're going to go and update the BIOS and get her booted up. And then we'll be back once this is all loaded to start talking about how much the build cost. We'll just run over that really quickly and some final thoughts. Okay guys, so the computer booted up right away. I might try to update the BIOS in the future, but it's nice to see that worked right well. I actually did have the power, I had the power supply in the off position and not in the on position, so I had a quick little scare there for a second, but then I just pulled her back open, flipped the switch on the power supply, and we were good to go. So I haven't got a chance to really play around with the computer just yet. Looking forward to doing that a little bit later. But let's kind of run down and kind of summarize what we've done here today. So first of all, how much did it cost? It was not a cheap enterprise. So what we're talking about here is packing some very, very powerful components into a very, very small form factor. And so of course that's going to come at a cost. The components are not ones that can be easily used in your general larger mid-tower form factors, and so they can be a little bit more expensive and specialized. So let's take a look at each one of those. First one wasn't too expensive, that was the cooler. Unfortunately, the Ryzen 5800X does not come with a stock cooler, so we had to pay $40 for that Nocta cooler. Then we have the motherboard, and this one was a bit expensive. Normally I'd spend probably about $125 on a motherboard, but this one from Gigabyte, one of the few ones that would be ready for socket AM4, which is the newest Ryzen CPU socket, and then also fit in such a small form factor. So unfortunately that one was a little more expensive at $214. And then the power supply was pretty expensive too to get such a small power supply that's going to pump out those 700 watts. So we ended up spending about $150 on that one. Then we have the case, and that was another $100. And then we had, I think it was $15 each fan with those cooling fans, not cheap, those little guys, because they're very slim. So that was another $30 there. And finally, of course, we had the CPU, which was the most expensive component and really the main upgrade. Well, the main two upgrades were, one was the CPU to get a much faster processor, and then two, to upgrade it into a very small form factor. But yeah, that CPU was $450. So that puts our total cost for the upgrade at $950. But again, because we're doing all this work ourselves, and we're not just swapping one machine for an entirely new build, then there are many parts we're able to reuse. We were able to reuse the memory sticks, both of those, which is 16 gigabytes, and we were also able to reuse the graphics card, which is fairly expensive as well. So that was really good. And we'll also be able to sell the old components on Facebook Marketplace. So I'm going to be listing those. I'm hoping they'll sell for maybe a little over $200, maybe $225 would be a decent price for all of that. Maybe I could get $250. We'll see. I don't know. We'll give it a go, but it's going to be in that ballpark. I'm thinking on the low end probably about $200 if I really wanted to sell everything quickly. So that helps. That would put our net cost at around $750. So not cheap again, but to accomplish both the things that we did, a very custom build, very, very small and very, very powerful build, I think it'll be good. And hopefully it'll end up being worthwhile, both in terms of editing the videos for this channel a little bit more quickly and easily, and then also generating content for the other channel, and then also for future travel plans. We shall see. It'll be nice to have a very portable, very powerful machine, and there will be more on that in the future. Anyway, hope this was helpful. Hope you guys liked it. If you've got any tips for computer building or upgrades or money saving and all those things, let us know in the comments below. If you liked the video, do hit the like button. It helps out the channel. If you'd like to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell icon if you'd like YouTube to let you know when new videos are posted. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one.